Hey guys, I'm Emily from the Blue Mouse, and today I'm going to show you how to make these mini wall hangings. And you could actually do pretty much anything you want with them. My original idea was to have them be statement necklaces, so you could do anything you want with them. They could be keychains, mini wall hangings, necklaces, whatever you want. You can get creative with it. But they have these little Eiffel Tower looking detail in them. And you have the option to add fringe if you want. And I am just using a double pointed needle as an example here, but you can also attach them to the wooden skewers that you get from a grocery store. You could use those, you could use a twig, anything you want as the piece of wood to make them a wall hanging. Alright, so for materials, you'll need some yarn. I'm using Peyton's Classic Wool Worsted, which I have a coupon code for in the description if you're interested. A pair of needles to match. I'm using US 8 or 5mm needles, a pair of scissors, a crochet hook, a yarn needle, and an optional measuring tape. Let's get started. You can make these with pretty much any yarn and any size corresponding needle. I made mine with worsted weight yarn and US 8 or 5mm needles. But again, if you want to use chunky yarn and make it a bigger wall hanging, you can go ahead and do that. Or you can use lace weight, fingering weight yarn, whatever you want. That will change the size of it. This is a little bit smaller than my hand. So if you use bulkier yarn, it will be a little bit bigger. And if you use thinner yarn, it will be a little bit smaller. The instructions will be using worsted weight yarn. Alright, so you're going to want to cast on 3 stitches. You can use whatever method you want. I like the long tail cast on method. Alright, so for row 1 we're going to knit 1 yarn over, knit 1 yarn over, knit 1. So knit the first stitch. And now we're going to yarn over. So you're going to bring the yarn from underneath the needle to the back. And that counts as your yarn over. And then you knit the next stitch. So just go into it normally, knit it, and we're going to yarn over again. So bring the yarn in front of the needle, around to the back, and then knit that last stitch. You should have 5 stitches on your needle. And now, turn your work. And for row 2, we're going to slip 1, yarn over, purl to the last stitch, yarn over, and slip 1. So we're actually going to slip the first stitch purlwise. So bring the yarn to the front and slip it as if to purl. So go into the stitch as if to purl, but just slip it to your right hand needle. And then we're going to yarn over. So we're on a purl row, so yarning over is going to look a little bit different. So your needle's in the front here. You're going to bring the yarn in front of it around to the back. And then purl. So purl into the yarn over from the last row, purl it and slide it off. Purl the next stitch. Purl that third stitch, which is your yarn over from the last row, and we're going to yarn over again. So bring the yarn in front of your needle, around to the back, and then slip that stitch as if to purl. Turn your work, and you're just going to knit across this row. So go into that first stitch and knit it, go into that second yarn over and knit it, and just keep going. And you should have 7 stitches on your needle at this point. Turn your work, and for row 4 you're going to slip 1 yarn over, purl to the last stitch, yarn over, and slip that last stitch. So bring your yarn to the front, and you're going to go into that first stitch as if to purl, but just slip it to your right hand needle, and we're going to yarn over again. So remember to bring the yarn in front of your needle around to the back, creating a yarn over. And if you need to, you can kind of hold those 2 stitches down with your right hand and then purl. So you see you have another yarn over there. And then purl until you have 1 stitch left. Alright, when you have 1 stitch left, we're going to yarn over again. So bring the yarn in front of the needle around to the back, creating a yarn over. And then you're going to slip the last stitch as if to purl. So go into it as if you're going to purl it, but just slip it to your right hand needle. You should have 9 stitches on your needle at this point. Turn your work, and you're going to knit this entire row. It may feel a little bit weird because the yarn is not attached to this edge stitch here. But just go into it as if to knit, yarn over, and knit the stitch. Knit that yarn over, and keep knitting across the row. Again, you should have 9 stitches on your needle. Alright, turn your work, and for row 6, you're going to slip 1, yarn over, purl 3, yarn over, purl 2 together, purl 2, yarn over, and slip 1. So I'll show you what that means. So you start out with a slip 1, so go into that first stitch as if to purl, but just slip it to your right hand needle. Now we're going to yarn over, so remember to bring the yarn in front of the needle around to the back. And if you find it helpful, you can hold those 2 stitches with your thumb. And then purl 3. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to yarn over again. So remember to bring the yarn in front of the needle around to the back. And now we're going to do what's called a purl 2 together. So that's exactly what it sounds like. You go into the next 2 stitches as if to purl. So into both of them as if to purl. Yarn over and pull through both. So you've just worked 2 stitches and created 1. Now you can slide them off, purl 2. You have 1 stitch left and we're going to yarn over. So bring the yarn in front of the needle around to the back and slip that last stitch as if to purl. Turn your work and you should have 11 stitches on your needle. And what we're going to do is we're going to knit 5, purl 1, and then knit the last 5. So knit 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bring your yarn to the front, purl 1, bring your yarn to the back, and knit those last 5. Turn your work. So for row 8, we're going to slip 1, yarn over, purl 4, knit 1, purl 4, yarn over, slip 1. So go into the first stitch as if to purl, but just slip it to your right hand needle. Yarn over, so bring the yarn around the front to the back, and I find it helpful to hold those 2 stitches with my thumb. Then go ahead and purl 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bring the yarn to the back, knit 1, bring the yarn to the front, and purl 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You should have 1 stitch left on your left hand needle. We're going to yarn over, bring your yarn around to the front, and then back to the back. And then we're going to slip the last stitch as if to purl. You should have 13 stitches on your needle, and turn your work. For row 9, we're going to knit 6, purl 1, and knit 6. Go ahead and do that. Knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bring your yarn to the front, purl 1, bring your yarn to the back, knit the final 6. Turn your work. And for row 10, we're going to slip 1, purl 5, knit 1, purl 5, and slip the last stitch. So go into that first stitch as if to purl, but just slip it to your right hand needle. Then purl 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bring your yarn to the back and knit 1. Bring your yarn to the front and purl 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you're going to slip that last stitch as if to purl. So go into it as if to purl, but just slide it to your right hand needle. Turn your work. For row 11, you're going to knit across the row. And when you're done, turn your work. So you've done all your increases, and you've also created your first Eiffel Tower. Now for this next section, we're going to create 2 more of those Eiffel Tower details. So for row 12, we're going to slip 1, purl 3, repeat a yarn over, purl 2 together, purl 2 until you have 1 stitch left, and then you slip that last stitch. So I'll show you how to do that. So start out with your yarn in the front, and we're going to slip the first stitch as if to purl. So go into it as if to purl, but slip it to your right hand needle. Purl 3. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to do a yarn over. So bring your yarn around to the front and bring it to the back, and then purl 2 together. So remember how we did this earlier? You go into the next 2 stitches as if to purl, yarn over like you would when you're normally purling, and purl those 2 stitches together, and then slide them off your needle. And then we're going to purl 2 normally, not purling 2 together, just purling 2 stitches. So 1, 2, and then we're going to yarn over again. So bring the yarn around to the front, to the back, then we're going to purl 2 together. So go into the next 2 stitches as if to purl, yarn over and purl them together, purl 2, and then you're going to slip the last stitch as if to purl. So go into it as if to purl, but just slip it to your right hand needle. Turn your work. And for row 13, we're going to knit 4, purl 1, knit 3 twice, and then for your last stitch, you're going to knit it. So knit the first 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bring your yarn to the front, purl 1. Bring your yarn to the back and knit 3. 1, 2, 3. You bring your yarn to the front and you purl that next stitch. Bring your yarn to the back and knit the next 3. And then you're actually going to knit the last stitch as well. Turn your work. For row 14, we're going to slip 1, purl 3, and then we're going to repeat knit 1, purl 3 twice, and then for the last stitch we're going to slip it. So I'll show you how to do that. Go ahead and slip that first stitch as if to purl. Purl 3, 1, 2, 3. Bring your yarn to the back, knit 1. Bring your yarn to the front, purl 3. 1, 2, 3. Bring your yarn to the back, knit 1. Bring your yarn to the front, purl 3. And then leave your yarn in the front and you're going to slip that last stitch as if to purl. Turn your work. So for row 15, you're going to repeat row 13, and for row 16, you're going to repeat row 14. So go ahead and do that. You can rewind to those rows in this video, and I'll meet you back here for row 17. And for row 17, you're just going to knit the entire row. So go ahead and do that. Turn your work. And for row 18, we're going to slip 1, purl 1, repeat a yarn over, purl 2 together, purl 2 twice, and then with the last 3 stitches, you're going to yarn over, purl 2 together, and slip 1. So start out with a slip 1. With your yarn in the front, slip that first stitch as if to purl. Purl the second stitch. And then we're going to yarn over, purl 2 together, and purl 2 stitches normally. So remember to bring the yarn around to the front and bring it to the back, and then purl 2 together. So go into the next 2 stitches as if to purl, yarn over, and purl them together. And then purl 2 stitches normally. And we're going to repeat that again. So yarn over, bring your yarn around to the front and bring it around to the back. Purl 2 together, so go into the next 2 stitches as if to purl, yarn over and purl them together. Purl 2 stitches normally. And we're going to yarn over, so bring the yarn around to the front and back to the back. Purl 2 together. So go into the next 2 stitches as if to purl and purl them together. And then slip the next stitch as if to purl. Turn your work. And for row 19, we're going to knit 2 and repeat a purl 1, knit 3 twice. And then with the last 3 stitches, we're going to purl 1 and knit 2. So start out by knitting the first 2 stitches. Bring your yarn to the front, purl 1. Bring your yarn to the back and knit 3. Bring your yarn to the front, purl 1. Bring your yarn to the back, knit 3. Bring your yarn to the front, purl 1. Bring your yarn to the back and knit 2. Turn your work. And for row 20, we're going to slip 1, purl 1, and then repeat a knit 1 followed by purl 3 twice, and then knit 1, purl 1, and slip the last stitch. So I'll show you how to do that. So go ahead and slip the first stitch as if to purl, purl 1. Bring your yarn to the back and knit 1. Bring your yarn to the front and purl 3. Bring your yarn to the back and knit 1. Bring your yarn to the front and purl 3. Bring your yarn to the back, knit 1. Bring your yarn to the front, purl 1, and leave your yarn in the front and slip that last stitch. For row 21, repeat row 19, and for row 22, repeat row 20. So basically you're just repeating row 19 and 20 one more time. and I'll meet you back here for row 23. Alright, for row 23, you're just going to knit across the row, turn your work, and we're actually going to bind off. So we're going to just do a standard knit bind off, but you can use whatever method you prefer. So start out by knitting 2, and you're going to take the first stitch here and pass it over the second and off the needle. So take your left hand needle into that first stitch, pull it over and off, and I like to pull that stitch up a little bit, knit the next stitch, and repeat that. So bring your needle into this first stitch here, pull it over the second and off the needle, pull up on your stitch a little bit, knit 1, pull it over and off, knit 1, pull it over and off, knit 1, pull it over and off, and repeat that until you have 1 stitch left. You can kind of pull that stitch out, cut a long tail, and then you're going to pull the tail through that last stitch, and then pull it tight. And there you have it. You've just finished a mini wall hanging. So if you want to attach it to a twig or something, you could use a twig, a small piece of wood, or you could get those wooden skewers that you find at the grocery store. You could use those as well. So I'll show you how to attach it. So go ahead and thread that long tail through a yarn needle. And then you see how that bind off has given us stitches. We're going to be going into those around the piece of wood that you're using. So go ahead and bring your yarn over that piece of wood and back, and moving in the direction towards you, go into that next stitch here in your bind off. You can kind of pull that loop a little bit tight, not too tight. Bring your yarn around to the back again, go underneath that next stitch, bring that needle towards you and pull through. Bring your yarn to the back, go underneath that next stitch, pull through. Bring your yarn to the back, go underneath that next stitch, pull through. Keep doing this all the way to the end. So what you want to do if you want to add fringe to your project is you're going to need to measure out yarn, and you'll need to measure out 30 pieces of yarn because you'll have 10 spots that you can add fringe to, and I'm going to show you how to do that with 3 strands of fringe. So you'll need to cut 30 pieces of yarn that are the same length. So you can take a measuring tape and measure it out if you like. If you want to do that, be careful that you have enough yarn initially. You'll always want to start out with more yarn than you think you need, and then you can cut it back later. So if you want 2-inch fringe, then you want to cut 5 to 6-inch strips of yarn, because when you fold it over, it will already half in its length, and then when you tie the knot, you'll lose some length there as well. So what I like to do is I like to just measure out the first piece and then cut it, and then I use that as my reference when I cut the rest. But you can do this however you want. And I don't do it incredibly exact because I can always go back and trim later. So I get it pretty close, and then I can go back and trim later if I need to. So go ahead and cut 30 strips of string or of yarn, the length that you want it to be. Alright, so how you do it, you take your crochet hook and you grab 3 strands of yarn to begin with, and you line them up so that the edges are all lined up here. And then you find your first hole, which is this one. So you should have 5 on each side. This is the 5th one up for me. So what you're going to do is you're going to wrap a little bit of this yarn, just the tail here. You're going to wrap just a little bit of that yarn around the crochet hook, and then use the crochet hook to pull that through the hole. And then you're going to pull both ends so that they line up. And then what you're going to do is tie a knot. So you're going to take the yarn like this. I have the end here between my thumb and my finger. And with your right hand, you just kind of twist it so that you have a hole here. So you twist it until you have a hole here, and then you grab that end of yarn and pull it through. Now don't pull it tight initially. Instead, you're going to kind of hold the knot here with one of your fingers and kind of pull it up as you're pulling the rest of the yarn down. So kind of pull on it as you're pulling down until you get to the very end, and then you can pull it tight. That just keeps the knot close to the top of the fringe instead of near the bottom. I'll show you how to do that one more time. And you're just going to do that all across the bottom of your wall hanging here. So grab 3 strands of yarn and line them up so that the ends are lined up. And then you take your crochet hook and you move to the next hole down, which is this one right here. Put your crochet hook in it. We're going to wrap just a little bit of one end of these 3 ends around your crochet hook and pull those through. Then you're going to line up your ends, and then you're going to essentially just tie them in a knot. So you create a hole here, and then you pull the ends through that hole. And before you pull it all the way, remember that you want to pull the knot towards your wall hanging as you're pulling the ends away. So kind of just guide it in that way. And then you can just kind of pull it tight at the end. And that's it. That's how you add fringe to your project. You just keep doing that all the way around until you have this much fringe. And if you don't like the length at the end, you can always cut to even it out or to shorten it, however you want. Make it totally your own. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more. It really does make a difference.